The speech was the longest State of the Union address in modern history, but it stood out in other ways as well. A lot can be said about what was not mentioned. Among the items we didn't hear about from the president were the Epstein files and survivors, a real why behind the Iran military buildup, and the names Alex Preddy and Renee Good, and also certain key members of the cabinet. I want to bring in Alexis Coe. She is a presidential historian and fellow at New America. She's also the New York Times bestselling author of Young Jack, John F. Kennedy, 1917 to 1957, and also she wrote one of the most clever book titles I have ever heard. You Never Forget Your First, a book about George Washington. I've never forgotten that. Let's start with the fundamental question. Are annual union addresses even necessary?
The Constitution does encourage presidents to report to Congress from time to time how the government is doing, but it says nothing about it being obviously televised because the Constitution was written at the Constitutional Convention. So we're still talking about, 18th century. But what happened was from 1803 until Woodrow Wilson, it was simply a release, a statement, a document, an update to Congress. And then after Wilson, we see Congress start to invite the president into their home. But in the age of television, it has become basically a campaign stop.
Yeah, it's really less for Congress now and more for the American people, right? I mean, did you think that this was a fitting speech to march 250 years as a nation?
It is such a heartbreaking missed opportunity for an American historian who's been looking forward to this year my entire career. I think that in general, it's always, when I look back at the most persuasive speeches throughout history, they often look at where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. And I think there was a great moment for Trump to take pride in the founding and then ask if we've lived up to those ideals and talk about going forward. But in order to do that, one must think of themselves as simply a name in a long line of names, and that this is really about America. And I think that no matter where you fall in the political spectrum, you knew that that was not going to be the focus. It was going to be the Trump administration.
Why does the president's use of language matter so much in terms of framing the national discourse in politics and beyond?
We see this trickle down. We saw this with January 6th. We see this in other elections. We see this in the House, in the Senate. We see a lot of imitation of Trump's rhetoric. And what we also see is people at home looking at these institutions and thinking, okay, disagreement is healthy, but can we trust them if they're in a state of utter dysfunction? The framers, so the founders who became framers, they wrote the Constitution. They constructed a government in which there was healthy disagreement, but that you needed the three branches in order. There was a tension that worked for the country. And I think it's very clear that it's not working. And I'm not certain that that gave people the hope that they needed and sort of the security and stability that people have been looking for, certainly through the headlines over the last few months.
Alexis Coe, thank you.
Thank you.